What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sector for Nerds, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars Retro Discussions. Today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 13, Jedi Crash. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to get right into it, you guys, because it feels like with this episode, we have so much to talk about. This is my favorite episode of Season 1. Well, this episode and the next episode are my two favorite episodes of this first season. They're so different, but it feels like they're staying so true to Star Wars, and we're going to get into it. There's so much I want to talk about. This episode was directed by Rob Coleman and written by Katie Lucas. Wait a minute, Katie Lucas, like George Lucas's daughter, Katie Lucas? That's right, people, because George's daughter was also involved in the making of the Clone Wars. It's like a little family business, you know? The cookie for this episode: greed and fear of loss are the roots that lead to the tree of evil. Alright, intro guy, your turn. The Republic fleet is on the defensive and pushed to the brink. As war rages in the much-contested Outer Rim territories, chaos and fear mount as the Separatist army wages in an epic battle against heavily outnumbered Republic ships in the far reaches of the Quell system. Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan Ahsoka race across the galaxy to aid Jedi Knight Aayla Secura, who is in the midst of a fight for her life as the sinister droid army closes in. Thank you, intro guy. And as Tom Kane was narrating this scene in the episode, we already see Ayla's fleet getting attacked, getting bombarded by the enemy. It's not looking good for our heroes. Now, Aayla Secura, you guys, this is our first time seeing her on screen besides Revenge of the Sith. Voiced by Jennifer Hale. And any fans of Star Wars The Knights of the Old Republic video games, you guys know that Jennifer Hale is no stranger to the Star Wars universe. She voices Bastila Shan and Satele Shan, both crucial characters in their respected games. Jennifer Hale has contributed a lot to the Star Wars universe, and we'll always be grateful for that. But we get this opening here, and of course, droids making an attack on Ayla's cruiser. Anakin, Ahsoka race to the rescue, and we get this intense battle scene at the start of the episode where they're taking on all the droids, they're trying to reach Aayla, and the ship's getting to a point too where it's ready to go. We start seeing it burning a lot. It then gets to a point where hallways are being lit up on fire. One of the scenes that always stands out to me is when they go up to the one battle droid. Anakin looks all excited because it's one droid, you're outnumbered. And then the doors open up and more battle droids are behind it, and the droid's like, haha. Hold it. But the big thing that happens at the start of this episode is we get Anakin sacrificing himself to save his crew. And he doesn't die, of course, big shocker, Anakin doesn't die. He gets knocked out trying to save everybody.
It's too late!
And one of the things that they had talked about in the behind the scenes for this episode, both Dave Filoni and Henry Gilroy, was this idea of Anakin getting hurt because, a lot of times when we see Anakin, right, he's our hero. He's the dude that can do no wrong. I mean, except for turning into Darth Vader, but he's always standing out on top. He's always winning. He never gets defeated. He never gets hurt. And then here, it's we turn the tables around a little bit. They get him on board their transport, they try to dock with the Venator, but then the hyperdrive ends up activating. It's all right, crap, we gotta detach or we're gonna take the Venator with us. And this episode kind of takes a turn from being all about this big Clone Wars battle to telling its own different adventure. And that's where I said I feel like it differs from a lot of the other episodes, because a lot of these other episodes, so far, it's telling battles of the Clone Wars, it's telling stories of leaders getting captured like Viceroy Gunray, or trying to stop separatist weapons like the Malevolence or Grievous's spy station. One of the things that I actually caught while watching the episode, and I feel like I remember this from a while back too, but it has been a minute since I've seen the episode, but when you hear Anakin breathing, at one point in the episode, you hear the Vader breathing, and I was like, oh shit. It's just meant to be that nice little tease, a little Easter egg for everybody who can catch it. And fortunately for me, I caught it. One thing I want to give a shout out to is the music in this episode. Shout out to Kevin Kiner, because the music in this episode, it was so different, but at the same time, like, it was just so good. Like, I'll sit there and just listen to those themes, and like, that's actually one of the reasons why I love the episode so much, not just because of the story, but the music, I feel like, just drove the story in such a different way than what we're used to seeing in this show. So definitely one of the reasons why I love this episode so much. One of the things I picked up on watching it this time around that maybe I didn't notice before is just like all of the animal sounds that you'll hear throughout the episode, and specifically cricket noises, which makes sense, right? Like, you're on like a planet full of trees and tall grass, so there's bound to be a lot of creatures and small animals.
Those creatures are still out there.
Aayla and Ahsoka have this conversation about attachments, and I feel like this is something I'll bring up before when talking about Ahsoka, because I feel like this was such a big thing of her being like, it's forbidden for Jedi to form attachments, but yet we're supposed to be compassionate. And it is one of those things, right, when you think about the Jedi standards, like, yeah, how does that work? Because it is kind of like a double standard, like, don't have attachments, but you're also supposed to care about others. So it's basically saying, don't have attachments, but also do be attached a little bit. One of the things that I want to bring up to you guys, a little story from back when I watched this episode, you know, at 8 years old. This was the first, I saw these episodes before watching Revenge of the Sith. It wasn't until like, I think around season 2 where I would have watched Revenge of the Sith, because that was like, you know, at that point I would have been like 10 years old, and then my parents would have finally let me see it. But when I saw Aayla save Bly, like, that told me a lot about Aayla Secura in that moment. Like, okay, so she really does care about her troops, kind of the way that we see Anakin care about them. Because, you know, there's the thing, right, where like some people treat the clones as just soldiers, as almost like robots, I guess, in a way, like droids, but then we see other people care about them as individuals, as humans. And I was just sitting there like, man, like, if the opportunity came, you know, Commander Bly would probably do the same thing for her. And then I watched Revenge of the Sith for the first time. It made Order 66 that much more heartbreaking, because the Bly just sits there and all the other clones just gun her down. And it's like, even after she's dead, right? Like, you see in the film, they just shoot her like what felt like 100 times. And like the same time that like Yoda drops his cane and like kneels to the ground, that was just like my heart in that moment. Like, why? Yeah, I don't recommend watching Clone Wars before Revenge of the Sith, man. No, I mean, whatever way you watch Star Wars is the way you do it. But man, that it just made it all the much more heartbreaking. And you know what? Maybe it did help in that case as well, because like when you see Order 66 the first time without seeing Clone Wars or without reading any comics or anything like that, you just see these Jedi and it's like, okay, yeah, they're getting wiped out. It's obviously a very sad scene, but like, you don't have like that personal connection with them. Whereas I feel like, because I'd watched a little bit Clone Wars, so it's like, I've seen Plo Koon, I've seen Luminara, I've seen Aayla Secura. So it's like, I know all these characters, and then to see them all get wiped out, it sucks. We get like these giant creatures that end up attacking the Jedi, the clones. I don't know what they're called. I don't think they ever said in the featurette either, but they're like these giant, like, raptor-like creatures. Their faces kind of look like a mixture of like a turkey and an ostrich, but they end up killing most of the clones that are there. The only one that survives is Commander Bly. And then once we get to the Lurman village, this is where I feel like the episode really gave us like the meat and potatoes of this episode, and it wasn't a battle scene. This was all driven by story. The Jedi obviously are trying to look for help to, you know, to give to Anakin to make sure that he's feeling better. And the leader of this tribe steps out and he's saying like, we colonized this system to find peace, to get away from the war. If we help you, like, we're destroying like what little piece we have left in the galaxy. You guys are only going to bring the destruction of us. Like, I think essentially implying like, you guys are going to bring the war to our doorsteps, which a little bit of foreshadowing, they kind of do a little bit. But what ends up happening is Ahsoka kind of pleads with them like, all right, can you at least just give us some medical supplies? My friend's dying.
Can you at least give us some medical supplies? My friend is dying. train.
I love when the chief was just like, I can't ignore a plea for help. So it kind of just shows you, like, the dude does care. He's not being senseless, but he does kind of strike a deal with them, right? Like, all right, I'll send my son to help you. He's a healer, but one of you guys have to stay here as, like, insurance. You know what I'm saying? Like, as an insurance policy. We wouldn't want, like, the kidnapping of our only healer. The son's got to be sitting there thinking, like, actually, wait, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't want to get kidnapped. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, too, was that they brought up in the featurette was the Lerman people and just, like, the way that they move around. And that was always something I found curious, like the way that Weg, too, when he's running, it's like he's rolling like a tire. The way that they move is reminiscent to some people called the Amanin. They're from a comic called Star Wars Empire. I'll admit I'm not familiar with this. Like, I'm not a huge, like, comic book reader, you guys. Like, I'll read some things, like, every now and again, just if it's something that I think, like, okay, maybe this might be interesting to read, but, like, ultimately, like, I'm not much of a reader. Like, that's not the way that I take in my storytelling. I like it more through movies and TV shows, which is why I want them to take more stuff from the comics, from the expanded universe, and insert it into movies and shows, because one of the things that David talked about is how they would take things that the Amanin did and applied them to the Lerman, which I guess were going to be used as concept in Revenge of the Sith, like, it was concept art for that. But David said, like, using the expanded universe to influence the story that we were doing.
You find that kind of thread in the Clone Wars series, and it's another way that not only I think are we keeping the history, the look of Star Wars alive and paying a real nod to the people that came before, but I think it definitely is exciting for the fans that know this stuff, that have seen it just scribbled on a page, to see it there live and thriving in the Star Wars galaxy.
And it's one of those things that I just wish more people would do, because it feels like, let's be honest with ourselves, it feels like everyone in Disney Star Wars besides Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau don't give a crap about the expanded universe. They don't know it. They don't care to know it. You had Kathleen Kennedy, like, in the early days of Lucasfilm being like, oh, there's no source material. And every single Star Wars fan went, brah, like, just look over here. So one of the things that's just super cool to me about the Clone Wars is the fact that the people that worked on this show actually care about Star Wars. And that's why if you guys watch a lot of my videos nowadays, and I've said this, you know, we've got the Ahsoka series going on right now at the time of this recording, and one of the things that I keep bringing up is Dave needs to be the head of the ship. Whatever Star Wars stuff you have going on, cancel it, do whatever, just let Dave be in charge of it all. Like, I don't care if we get one show a year, one movie a year, like, I don't care. I would rather we just get a small amount of Star Wars directed and written by someone who actually cares about it than to get an overabundance of Star Wars by people who don't care about it and couldn't care less. I don't want to go into it too much here, you guys, because that's not what this show is meant to be, but it was one of those things, like, when I listened to that featurette for this episode and listened to Dave talking about the expanded universe, like, that was just, like, it really meant a lot to me. And again, like, I'm not someone who reads all of the books and comics and all these other things, so that's why I want them to bring more of this into TV, into live action. And it's not to say that you have to do it beat for beat, but just, like, taking from things and paying homage to what came before. That to me is always a big thing with Star Wars, is paying homage to the material that came before. And it feels like with some of the newer stuff, they don't necessarily do that. But again, I'm going on a rant, I'm going on a side quest. Let's kind of bring it back on track. We got another big thing to talk about in this episode, and it's one of probably my, like, not my favorite Clone Wars moment, because there's so many great Clone Wars moments, but this is for sure up there as, like, just one of them as far as, like, conversations go. And that's between Aayla and the village leader. And I believe his name is Tiwaka. They say it in the credits, and they say it in the next episode as well, but I don't think they ever reveal his name in this one. But they're talking about the Clone Wars and talking about, like, you know, who started the war, who wants to end it, it doesn't matter, it takes two to fight. And then Tehuacá has this line that I wrote down here in my notes that is, only when you lay your arms down and pursue a course of nonviolence can you make this claim to me that the Jedi are peacekeepers. And one of the reasons that that line has always stood out to me is that's exactly what Luke Skywalker does in Return of the Jedi. He throws his weapon away. He's pursuing a course of nonviolence because at the end of the day, he loves his father, right? And he doesn't want to have to kill him.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
And I just found that so interesting. Like, man, like if Tehuacá would have saw that, like he would have looked at that and went like, that's what I'm talking about. It's kind of just like this line that has so much implication for Star Wars. In like just an episode in the middle of the season of Clone Wars, you just have this like golden egg of dialogue, and it's great. One of the things I wrote down in my notes for this episode that I've always questioned is, so they don't kill the giant raptor creature, but they tie it up and let it starve to death. Like, at least with the first one, right? Like, Rex shot it right away. It gets taken out of its misery right away. But then, like, the second one, Wagtu's begging Ahsoka, like, no, don't kill it, don't kill it. But then all they do is just tie it up. And what, like, it just sits there and, like, until it starves? Like, I feel like that's a much more gruesome death. Unless they plan on, like, releasing it later, like cutting it up and letting it go free. But they never said. I don't know what they're doing. The episode ends with Ahsoka and Aayla having a conversation with one another. And one of the things that they had talked about in the featurette for this episode is, at least that Henry Gilroy did, was essentially giving Ahsoka another mentor figure, kind of like a bigger sister.
You know, it gave us the opportunity to have another mentor relationship for Ahsoka. Kind of a big sister figure.
But man, I really wish that they would have put Aayla in more episodes of the Clone Wars. Like, I think she's in a couple of episodes, but it's not like a big role or anything like that. Like, she's not the central focus of the episode. But yeah, you guys, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. This, like I said, this episode and the next episode are my two favorite episodes of Clone Wars Season 1. And man, it's like there's so many like different Clone Wars episodes that are so amazing in the show, but like I would put these two up there as like some of the better episodes of the show. I remember, for those who remember in like some of the earlier days of my channel when I created like some of those top 5 videos, like talking about my top 5 favorite episodes of each season of Clone Wars, you guys can find those videos under my Star Wars Ranked playlist. And I remember when I was putting that list together, like originally I was putting like Jedi Crash and Defenders of Peace like a little bit lower on the top 5 list. And I say lower, like it's, you know, there's 22 episodes in a season. They're still in the top 5. That's pretty good. But they're like, I went back and I watched those episodes and I'm like, okay, I need to like, I want to watch these just because I think I know deep down that these are my favorite episodes of this season, but I needed to be sure. So at the time when I put that list together, I went back, I watched those episodes, and I'm like, yeah, those 2 episodes are going at the top. I feel like I could sit here and like talk about this episode all day, like that's how much I loved it. But for now, you guys, I think that is going to wrap us up for today. Next week, we're going to be talking about part 2 to this arc called Defenders of Peace. So make sure you guys are staying tuned next Monday for that episode. And make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.
We still have to find a way off this planet.